Welcome back to the Call Up, your go-to podcast on the future stars of Major League Baseball. As always, I'm Aram Layton. He's Jack McMullen, and we've got Rule 5 draft talk today. That thing crept up fast. It's already coming up tomorrow. That's December 7th, and we're here to talk about just about every prospect we can. Jack, we talked about it before. We've done our due diligence. We've done everything we can to try to compile as many names that we think have a very good chance of being taken and some of the best names that, we think definitely will be taken. But I think we've kind of accepted that a few are going to slide through the cracks because this is the most loaded Rule 5 draft of all time.
We're 2 years backed up. So we're working on guys that should have been Rule 5 eligible that might not have been ready at the end of the 2021 season. They're certainly ready now in 2022 to get their big league shot and to land on a 40-man roster. There was a big time crunch with all 30 teams. We saw the frenzy that Tampa ran with right before the 40-man roster protection deadline. I mean, they were wheeling and dealing, and they still had to DFA a couple of guys. I saw they DFA'd Bly Madris, who, played pretty well for Pittsburgh a little bit, and he was traded. He was, I think, the AAA World Series MVP, and here you are getting DFA'd and not even landing on the 40-man because that organization was just so backed up. Every team had to make some pretty drastic decisions, and that left a lot of players unprotected. So like you're saying, there are way too many names for us to nail who's going to go. Beauty of this is we're talking about it on Tuesday afternoon. The draft is on Wednesday. So on Thursday, we'll know where everybody is, and we can do a recap episode talking about fit.
Yeah, that's going to be way easier. And I'm very excited to do that. We promised a little primer, so we're definitely going to do that. And I'm sure there's a lot of, prospect heads out there that are excited for this Rule 5 draft as we are, because it's going to be fascinating to see how teams approach this. You're going to have those high A, arms or brief stint in AA arms that the stuff is just so good. They've got two pitches that a team may take a chance and pluck one of those guys that may be a little bit more, buried when it comes to other teams being on that radar compared to other years. But then you also have way more quadruple A bats, and I say that in the nicest way possible, of guys that might be worth a shot for teams that are in rebuild mode. And then you have some stash bats and some stash arms that are interesting as well, because if you're a team that's extremely far off, like the Washington Nationals, let's say, why wouldn't you stash a Ronnie Simon, who's another guy from the Rays, as you're mentioning, that the Rays have that roster crunch. Ronnie Simon, a guy that we talked about, a guy that really stood out to me in the Arizona Fall League, who I think is a really, really good player and will continue to blossom into a good player, but is still a bit far off, right? Had a good stint in AA, but, chase rates are a little high, has some things he needs to work through. I think he's going to be a good player. And if I'm a rebuilding team with a bad farm like the Nationals, I'm stashing that guy. Kind of like the Tigers did with Akil Baddoo. And I think Ronnie Simon could be this year's Akil Baddoo, even though he has a lot more experience at the upper levels and a lot more even high A experience than Baddoo did. So that was one guy I wanted to get out of the way right away, because he's not one of them that you're going to plug in like a Jake Mangum of the Mets, who I think could be a fourth outfielder tomorrow. But Ronnie Simon, a guy I would absolutely be willing to stash there. You want to start with the outfielders, Jack? We'll kind of fly through them, spend a little bit more time on the guys that, we think have the highest likelihood of being taken. And then, of course, we'll get to the arms as well.
Yes, I do. Before we do that, I do want to read the actual definition in MLB.com's glossary of how the Rule 5 draft and how roster protections work after a guy is selected.
That would be smart to explain the thing.
Right. Because we say Rule 5. Okay, what is Rule 5? What are the 4 rules before it? And I have no idea what the 4 rules before it are.
I don't even know why they call it that, honestly.
I'm not sure. It's like Exhibit 10 deals in the NBA. What are the first 9 exhibits before you get to the 10th? But here are the first 3 paragraphs, and this will be 60 seconds long. I'm just taking this verbatim from MLB.com. They've actually got a really great glossary. If you're ever curious about certain things like Super 2s or mutual options, just Google it, go to MLB.com's glossary, and you can read through that. So this is the definition of the Rule 5 draft. Held each December, the Rule 5 draft allows clubs without a full 40-man roster to select certain 40-man roster players certain non-40-man roster players from other clubs. Clubs draft in reverse order of the standings from the previous season. Players signed at age 18 or younger need to be added to their club's 40-man roster within 5 seasons, or they become eligible for the Rule 5 draft. Players who signed at age 19 or older need to be protected within 4 seasons. So that explains who's eligible, right? If you were a college pick, then chances are you've spent 4 years in your system and you were not out of the 40-man. If you were an international guy, those tend to be the younger guys because, you sign when you're 16. If you hit age 21 and you're not, protected on the 40-man, then you become Rule 5 eligible. Quote, not every club will make a selection, but those that do pick a player must pay $100,000 to the club from which said player was selected. Rule 5 draft picks are assigned directly to the drafting club's 26-man roster and must be placed on outright waivers in order to be removed from the 26-man roster in the subsequent season. Should the player clear waivers, he must be offered back to his previous team for $50,000, so half of the acquisition price, and can be outrighted to the minors only if his original club does not wish to reacquire him for the $50,000. A Rule 5 draft pick can be placed on the Major League injured list, but he must be active for a minimum of 90 days to avoid being subject to the aforementioned roster restrictions in the next campaign. So you can't take a guy in the Rule 5 draft and just slap him in AAA, even if he hasn't debuted. The way it works is you take him, you add him to the 26-man roster, and then you pay that club that you took him from $100K.
Yeah.
If you do want him in minor league baseball, you got to put him on waivers, and anybody can come up and
he's got to clear waivers, and then the team that you took him from has to reject the idea and say, no, we don't want him for $50,000. So
correct.
Which rarely happens. Most of the time the team will take him back. The player has to be really bad or had to have gone really poorly with his new team to go through waivers and then not be bought back for half the price, because the team still gets to pocket $50K. Like, it's a no-brainer for them. And it's not
correct.
about the money. It's the challenge of, if I take this player, is he going to contribute to my major league 26-man roster, which we know, even with the additional 26 spot, like, it is extremely difficult to, for teams all the time. They're always in a crunch at all times in a 162 game marathon. And that's why when you talk about stash, it's rare circumstances where you're going to stash a guy that can't contribute for you. So that's why most of the time we see bullpen arms, because you still are always going to have that middle relief mop up guy. Zach Pop for the Marlins. I'm going to talk about what's closer to me and what I saw. Zach Pop was that for them in the beginning. Like, he'd come in and mop up duty, but as he got better and better and started to, look like more of a legitimate high leverage arm, they started using him in high leverage more. It's easier to stash a bullpen guy than it is a bat. So that's why it's always a little bit more difficult with the bats. And I think this year it's as easy to justify as possible, because these bats are a lot more advanced and a lot more talented than we've seen eligible in the Rule 5 draft in previous years because of the multi-year backup like we talked about.
Yes, 100%. So, if a guy gets selected in the Rule 5 draft, simply put, they're either going to be contributing for that team and that major league roster, or chances are they're back on their old team. Yeah. So just because a guy's selected does not mean that he will be playing for this team. But the first couple of picks, they should absolutely be in Major League Baseball, be on the 26-man roster.
Well, and usually that's, if you're going to take a guy, that's the plan, right? So it's going to be interesting to see what bats go. We'll get into the arms second. We'll start with the outfield, get to the infield, and then go to those arms to wrap up, actually. So I have a whole article that we're going to put out at justbaseball.com. If it's out in time, it'll be linked in this podcast description. If it's not, just check out justbaseball.com, but I should be able to embed it in time. I'm going to start with Jake Mangum, because I think he's one of the easier guys to justify in terms of, like, okay, I'm going to take this guy and he's instantly my fourth outfielder. Mets prospect. I was kind of surprised to see him not get protected here. He's not going to light it up when it comes to what he does offensively, but He's an elite defender. I was pulling some clips and watching the video, Jack. Like, this guy can cover ground and gets unbelievable reads. So at the very least, you've got that in a fourth/fifth outfielder. Left-handed bat, can run, and he had a 118 WRC plus between AA and AAA. So at the big league level, if this guy's a 90 to 95 WRC plus player, which I think is very feasible, I think you can justify the pick here if you really need that fourth outfielder. And Mangum seems like a good option.
Yeah, I mean, what's the jam, right? It's speed, defense, and bat to ball, and that's Jake Mangum's game. Like, he's not going to wow you with anything really, except maybe the grit that he shows up to the ballpark with each and every day. So, I've got no idea if Mangum is a grit guy, but what he can provide you is like this surefire, no concerns defensively, and serviceable bat in the 8 or 9 hole. So do you need an 8 hitter that plays elite defense? Like, think Adam Engel, but way cheaper. Engel was non-tendered. He's still out in the ether. Mangum is, I think, a better option here.
Exactly. And I mean, you can also just plug him late in ball games, pinch run late in ball games. Like, there's going to be value from Jake Mangum. A little bit more of a challenge in terms of, if he doesn't hit, he could be a clogger, which is why it's going to be interesting to see if this guy gets selected. I think he should. Is Ryan Noda. And I have him under outfield, but he's probably more of a first baseman. We've talked about him a little bit when we talked about the Dodger system. And, you can probably hide him in a corner and he'll be good enough in right. He's a sneaky good athlete, just doesn't move as well as you'd think when it comes to just tracking fly balls. But I mean, Noda, we've talked about him a bunch because he's just raked at every stop, well over 100 WRC plus at every single stop. So this is a guy that really hits. I think could be a very good option for them or for anybody who picks him up. But you got to really hope that he continues to hit, because you're not going to get that a ton of defensive value, but at least he can play first and the corners. Obviously the Dodgers just couldn't protect him because they're so loaded, but look at what he did last year. 259, 395, 474 slash line, 25 home runs. And he was 20 of 24 for stolen bases. If you want to talk about, good hitter environment there in the PCL, sure. But he also did it in AA. He also did it in high A when he was with Toronto. He even did it in rookie ball back in 2017. This guy has always hit and has a great approach.
Yeah, so those are all the pros. The con is he's going to turn 27 years old right before the season starts. He'll turn 27 on March 30th. So are you taking a guy that has played 0 big league games, has a grand total of 0 big league plate appearances at 27 years old to be on your major league roster? That's the con. But again, the pro, circling back, the guy's just hit everywhere. I mean, he spent a full season at every level, and he's just hit each stop. He is the best hitter on each team he's on until this year in OKC. Like, Miguel Vargas was better, but Noda was always in the lineup. You know what I mean? So the Dodgers, like, they've just got younger, sexier, more exciting pieces, right? Miguel Vargas, Michael Busch. You could even argue like a guy, I mean, Pages obviously, but you could even argue a James Outman or a Ryan Ward, or a bit more sexy than Ryan Noda. But Noda's hit at each stop, and it hasn't been like this drastic upgrade since joining the Dodger system. He was good with Toronto. He turned into a great minor league hitter with the Dodgers.
Absolutely. And a guy with a similar kind of output this past season in AAA, in a sneaky good system. I know the Astros don't get the fanfare farm system wise as some of the others, but we just talked to Joey Loperfido, Astros prospect, who is rising as quick as any, and that episode will be out tomorrow as well. And Loperfido talked about just how there's so many dudes in that system that just don't get, kind of like the Braves, that that they're going to be big leaguers, but don't get that top prospect kind of attention. Corey Julks gets pinched out. And he's an outfielder who's older as well, but Julks had as good of a season last year as you could really ask for. And I look at this guy and I'm thinking, man, I figure someone's going to take a chance. So Julks hits 270, 351, 503 last year in a full season at the AAA level, 31 home runs, 22 stolen bases, a 22% K rate, 9.5% walk rate. To give you an idea, though, I know those numbers sound insane. You're probably like, wow, why is he not protected then? It only gave him a 108 WRC plus in AAA there. So it shows you how hitter friendly it is out there. But at the other side of it, the batted ball data is pretty impressive. 105.4 mile per hour, 90th percentile. Exit velocity is well above average. He pulverizes fastballs, but struggles against breaking balls. And breaking balls, sliders, curveballs really carved him up this year. So I think the Astros, a very analytically driven team. They looked at Corey Julks. They said he can't play center. He's limited to a corner, and he really struggles against breaking balls. I don't know if that's going to translate at the big league level. And they were willing to, probably bet on losing him here because of that reason. Still, I think a team should absolutely take a chance on this guy.
Yeah, I don't think they're ruined like without Corey Julks. I think they're going to be just fine. But Julks is, another guy, same as the Ryan Noda conversation. He's going to be 27 years old on opening day, and he has not sniffed Major League Baseball yet. So do you take a chance on a guy that could have immense pop, or 31 turns into 20 when he gets off the moon, right, in the PCL? So we'll see how he translates. I do think some of that limited versatility defensively prohibited him from being added to that Astros 40-man, just because they've got other guys. You know what I mean? Like Chas McCormick. Julks is not beating out Chas McCormick for reps.
Not even Jake Myers.
He's not beating out Jake Myers for reps. Even in the DH role, I don't even think he's beating out Hensley for reps right now because Hensley stood on his head. So the Astros have this gluttony of riches, and I think they have to be okay with letting this guy walk.
Yep. And that's just what happens sometimes. And there's definitely going to be a team that it's worth the gamble, see if he can start to hit breaking balls a bit better and, see how things go. Julks was an 8th round pick in 2017 by the Astros and did have a really nice season last year as well in AA, also a hitter friendly environment. And that's kind of the trend here is it's almost like you're challenged to play fact or fiction on these guys' PCL stats. You'll notice a lot of PCL prospects that put up big numbers. And it's tough because good players put up good numbers, but also there's a little bit of fool's gold in that PCL. So it's trying to figure out, with the data, who that fool's gold might be. But a guy that I don't think is fool's gold, and his ceiling is extremely limited compared to some of the other names we mentioned. And we talked about him briefly when we talked about the Cubs system, and also in the episode with Matt Mervis. Matt Mervis called Darius Hill the best bat to ball guy he's ever seen, which honestly, the data backs it up. If you watch this guy hit, it backs it up. We talked about how frantic his swing can look at times, but he plays all 3 outfield spots. He's a lefty bat who hit 314, 359, 453 with a 13% K rate. Darius Hill seems like a no-brainer pickup for a team that needs a bat that really needs somebody that can, be that 4th outfielder. But I think Hill could plug in right away, and you can see what he does if you're, a rebuilding team. This is one of the safer Rule 5 options because I think at the very least, you're going to get a guy that puts the ball in play and plays all 3 outfield spots.
We just talked about him last week when we did the Cubs top 10 prospects, so I'll keep it very quick. If you hit, you hit. He's hit at every single stop, and give him a chance to hit at the major league level. And this is a guy where, I think you're okay if you're a rebuilding team just fronting 100K, and if he's not that good for a month in Major League Baseball, then you outright him and see what happens. You place him on waivers and, you see what happens there.
Absolutely. And I think he's an upgrade over or some other teams that just have not been able to have some prospects come up and kind of make that, make that transition to the big league level and make that leap. I think Hill kind of fits the mold of a guy that might be able to do that.
Right.
A couple Pirates guys that I know you saw plenty of last year, Blake Sabol, Matt Gorski. I think both are very, very high risk for the Pirates to lose. We'll start with Sabol because that's a guy that I saw a little bit of in the Arizona Fall League as well. You could probably speak better to the defense. I can speak to the bat for sure, which just being able to see him take batting practice, seeing him in games. There's a little bit of length to the swing, but he knows how to really be effective with his approach and take his A swing at the right pitches. He doesn't expand the zone too much. 25% K rate, I think, through the year. But again, hit for power, continue to get better as the year went on and seemed to get better with his approach as the year went on. Catcher, but can play some outfield. I like the bat, and he was even better in triple, like I said, when you saw him. Sable's a guy that you were a bit surprised to see not get protected.
Yeah, I think we might be talking about the number 1 overall pick, right? And, it's funny because, hey, I'm the number 1 overall pick. in what draft?
Yeah. The
In the
Rule of
one
Five.
of all the rejects, quote unquote, of the Rule 5 draft eligible guys. But no, I think Sable, like, he could very well be the first guy off the board. I think he's got a very high chance of being the first bat off the board. We're going to talk about Victor Vodnik a little bit later on, and I think that guy is probably the best player available as it stands right now, and he's the most MLB ready. But nothing about watching Sable for the last month and a half of the AAA season made me think that he's not MLB ready. Frankly, I'm shocked that he wasn't protected and slotted into the 2023 plans for the Pittsburgh Pirates. I've got no idea why that wasn't the case. But you got a guy that can catch at a relatively high level. You've got a guy that can play a corner outfield spot at a relatively high level. You've got a guy that can play first base in a pinch. And you've got a guy that grinds out at bats. Like, that was the most interesting thing to me. Yes, the data probably speaks to him being an impactful hitter and he can hit the ball with some juice. But the thing that jumped out was, yeah, the 25% K rate, but he did not go down without a fight really ever. And he's got pretty solid plate discipline. I think that this dude has figured out how to massage his way through an at bat. And I think with the defensive versatility, you're looking at a guy that should be a big league utility man in 2023 on opening day.
And will have just turned 25 on opening day, so a little bit younger than some of the other names. The other thing that stands out to me with Sable is you're always trying to poke a hole in these guys because you're trying to understand why they weren't protected. Sable, obviously his numbers skew better against right-handed arms as a left-handed bat, but competent left on left, 742 OPS, and put up pretty decent numbers there. Gorski, a guy that again is one of the better bats available, a little bit more understandable why he wasn't protected, right? Because he's a bit more limited, I think, defensively, given that he did play all three outfield spots, but I think he's limited to a corner, and he did strike out about 29% of the time between, what was it, high A and double A, and we got limited look. A limited look at him in AAA. So it makes a little bit more sense that Gorski wasn't protected with the roster crunch that the Pirates had. But Gorski really exploded last year in a lot of ways offensively. And, I think he could still be a guy that's worth taking a chance on with some sneaky athleticism too.
Yeah, I do think he's a good athlete. And he kept on aggravating a quad issue, which was really weird. Like, you don't see quad issues in baseball players that often, but this was a guy that was going, full speed at all times. He can provide ample power and he can provide some good athleticism, like you're saying, some decent speed on the base paths, the ability to maneuver the outfield in a good way. I'm not sure how major league ready he is because he did all this in double. I would be surprised if someone took him, but I wouldn't be jaw on the floor shocked as opposed to Sable, where I'm jaw on the floor shocked.
That's exactly where I'm at too. Sable, would be absolutely stunned with Gorski. I can understand a team not really willing to take that chance because I feel like a lot of teams have Matt Gorskis. I do
a
feel
lot
like
of them.
I feel like a lot of teams do have Matt Gorskis. That's what you got to look at too, right? Okay, this guy might be a decent prospect, but a lot of teams have these kinds of prospects. And I think, Gorski kind of fits that mold. Cameron Meisner kind of fits that mold with the Rays, right? Yeah, he's a good prospect. He walks a lot. He swings and misses a lot. Big time power, good defender, can play all three spots. But, other teams have some similar guys to Meisner. He's probably not going to get taken because of the limited, ability at the higher levels. One guy that I think is one of the more underrated names, and I expect to get taken, but I could totally be wrong on this, is Dominic Canzone. I think it's Canzone, right? Not Canzone.
Yeah, Canzone.
Canzone, Diamondbacks. Yes, PCL. And like I was talking about, we're always trying to figure out the fact or fiction with some of these guys, but I really like what I saw from Canzone. And if I were a team, and that's a guy I'm willing to take a chance on. He in the upper levels last year, 299, 367, 541 slash line, 22 home runs, 15 stolen bases, 19% K rate, 8.5% walk rate. That gave him a 124 WRC plus. Looking at the data, 104.6 mile per hour, 90th percentile exit velo. That's well above average. Chase rate's a little high, but when you have a K rate that's sub 20% with a high chase rate, that tells me there's a guy that's just confident, feels like he can hit everything. He'll rein that in a little bit. He's a left-handed bat as well, which I like. He can play first base, both corner outfield spots. Good numbers left on left. 867 OPS left on left. 919 OPS against righties. He's a guy that's done it outside the PCL too. So it wasn't this like magical PCL explosion where we're like taking that with a grain of salt. I think Canzone's one of the better bats, outfield bats especially, that we're going to see in this Rule 5.
Yes, I'm with you. Doesn't strike out. Smart base runner. Like, he is a very low risk outfielder, and I do think that he's going to get taken. Shout out the 2018 Brewster Whitecaps. They went on like this tear, right? You were out on the Cape in 2019, and the Brewster Whitecaps won the CCBL, and then in 2021,
No,
they
2019, the Kettleers won it.
Oh, that's right. You were the
Don't
champ.
take that away from me. I got my ring.
That's right. That's right. So 21, Brewster won it. 22, they were the runner-up, I think. But 2018, they were like bottom of the league until the very last day. But Dominic Kinzone, good dude out there. And, he's always been a high bat to ball, high IQ base runner. You look at what he did at Ohio State, right? His freshman year, 13 for 15 in the stolen base department. Sophomore year, 15 for 18. Junior year, 8 for 9. And then here you are, you're looking at the last couple of years in minor league baseball. 2021, he was 19 for 23 in the stolen base department. This year, he was 15 for 17. So you know that you're going to get a guy that does not run into outs, can play all over the outfield, and will always put bat on ball. And I think that's a safe pick in a Rule 5 draft.
Indeed, he's got juice. He took advantage of the hitter-friendly environments. Looking at the data, he hit one that hit a jet stream in a game in Double-A, I believe, in the beginning of the season before he got quickly promoted, off of Moises Lugo. That was 108 off the bat and went 505 feet. So, I know it's hitter-friendly environment, but that's 500 feet to me is impressive no matter what. So that's pretty freaking crazy.
Yeah.
I like him a lot as an option, and the left on left, numbers really do, I think support that. And then just turned 25 years old, so a little bit younger than some of the others. A couple quick names that we don't need to go too deep into. Jimmy Herron, I don't know if he gets taken because brief stint in AAA in a very hitter-friendly environment, didn't quite put up great numbers until the very end, but put up good numbers in Double-A in Hartford, where it is not very easy to hit. He's a great runner, can play all three outfield spots, phenomenal approach, and just a good ball player. So if a team, has a little bit of an idea of who Jimmy Herron is and maybe a little bit more clued into him, I could see a team snagging him just because I think he's a really good player. Also a friend of the show, came on, a few months back. I think Herron's a good ball player. A couple infielders. We already talked about Ronnie Simon. I would stash that guy. I think that's maybe the best prospect with upper level experience available in this Rule 5. Yeah. Cam Devaney, is it Devaney? Devaney. Cam Devaney is probably going to be one of the top names out of this group as well because of his defensive ability. He kind of plugs right in as that utility guy, I think, for any team that's looking to pick him up. He hit a lot of home runs this year, which is interesting. Another place, though, where to jet stream in Biloxi, we know that. But his defensive prowess is his calling card, and he can play all over. He can play a good shortstop. He can play a good third. He can play a great second. I think you can even plug him in the outfield if you wanted to. And even in a hitter-friendly environment, 23 home runs is 23 home runs, hit 3 more in triple as well, 116 WRC plus. There's some swing and miss concerns in the data, I'll be honest. There's a lot of, a lot of red flags in terms of the swing and miss, but I think with the defensive versatility, with the power that he showed, the team's definitely going to take a shot on him.
Yeah, I do think so. I don't think you're going to find very many utility guys that have 25 to 30 homer potential. And if he keeps on filling into what he could be, like, that's a guy that is a utility guy that, what do you hope he is? Keston Hero with more bat to ball?
Keston Hero with a better glove. I don't think he has the power that Keston Hero has, though. I mean, Hero's got some crazy power.
Yeah, but Devaney doesn't have the swing and miss that Hero does.
Not necessarily, no. So it's
tough. It's hard
because Hero sucks at defense. Like, that's the problem. Devaney's a great defender. There's not, like, it's a rare profile. It's a good question because it's like, how often do you see a really good defender that can play all over with power and some whiff concerns? It's like, it's weird. It's a weird profile.
Yeah, and how do you pitch? What's the elevator pitch for Cam Devaney being on the roster? Hey, he's a bench bat that can hit some bombs when he's in the lineup.
And he can pick it. I think that the big calling card is he can pick it all over and run into baseballs.
That's an enticing guy. That's an enticing build.
That's why I think he's going to be one of the first guys taken. And I would bet that he's one of the first bats taken.
You think Devin Mann is one of the first bats
That's the
taken?
last guy I was going to mention. Because I think Malcolm Nunez isn't even really worth mentioning. I'd
No,
be
I mean
shocked if he's taken.
I saw Nunez. He was part of the return for Quintana from St. Louis, and like he had a brief cameo and he had a homer and triple, but he's not major league ready.
He's so far off. He's 21 though, maybe one of the youngest Rule 5 eligible guys I've seen in a while,
Yeah.
and just shows you how young he was signed. But yeah, he's just too far off, too much swing and miss, and he's a horrible defender. With all due respect, so he's gonna clog you up there. Probably not getting taken.
Yeah.
Devin Mann, I would take. I really would. He is a safe profile because 85% zone contact, 15% chase rate, and he hits the ball pretty hard. Like not nearly the exit velos of the other guys we were talking about, more average exit velos, but when you're making the contact he's making, 14% walk rate, 19% K rate, and hit the way he did across every level, that's going to translate for me. He played games all over. He made starts at second base, first base, third base, shortstop, left field, right field, mostly played second base. This is another utility guy, unlike Devaney, maybe not as much upside, but this is somebody that I think very much you could feel confident will be a utility piece that will be competitive from the get-go, I think, at the big league level. Going to be 26 by the time the season starts, but I feel this is probably one of the safest bat to ball infielders that you're going to find in the Rule 5 draft.
Is there enough impact to make him a 5-year, 6-year major league player?
I think so. I think he hits the ball just hard enough, and his swing decisions are elite and 85% zone contact. He's a pretty big guy at 6'3". I think he could, grow into a little bit more power. I really do think Devin Mann is a good option for a lot of teams.
What I like about a lot of the guys that we've talked about is the defensive versatility too. And Mann can play all over, as can Michael Busch, right? And if you've got Michael Busch, you don't need Devin Mann. And that was the Dodger decision. We talk a lot about the outfielders, and these outfielders can play any of the three for the most part, at least both corners. And then Sable is a guy that can catch and play the outfield and possibly play first base. So there should be something clicking for you guys when we talk about defensive versatility. Nobody is drafting the starting right fielder for their team on opening day in the Rule 5 draft. They're drafting utility bench bats, and there are some really good utility bench bats available.
And you're hoping, you catch lightning in a bottle and one of those guys blossoms into more, but you need a contingency plan, right? Because if you're selling out for a guy to be your right fielder, odds are stacked against you. You take a bench bat, you're hoping he's going to be a little bit more. If he's a bench bat, you're happy with that. So that's kind of where most of these guys are